Thank you very much. My name again is Joe Goergen. I'm an OWI Research Fellow today presenting some work done at Michigan State University. I first want to acknowledge my in-country research partners at NACSO and WWF Namibia, and importantly acknowledge the communal conservancies as owners of some of the data that I used. Also a special thank you to Conservation Force for supporting my attendance here this week. If you haven't noticed, I'm not Namibian, so I'm not here to represent NACSO or the conservancies, but think I can try to apply their model of community-based natural resource management to the discussions here this week about wildlife economy. So managing income from ecosystem services, governance of communal institutions are critical challenges for CBNRM or for the sustainability of wildlife economies. I don't need to introduce the concept of CBNRM to this audience, but what I think is important for us to remember is that it's a human-centered, utilitarian approach to conservation, recognizing the role of IPLCs, Indigenous peoples, local communities, in conservation is one of the most important paradigm shifts in conservation globally. There's a need to continually evaluate these programs as they mature. Now, I'm using income as a metric of financial, of evaluating performance of these programs. We know that income is not the only driver of conservation. There are non-tangible benefits, but financial sustainability is key to addressing challenges like employment in rural areas, food insecurity, increasing rates of human-wildlife conflicts, and climate change-induced droughts. And I think our presenter this morning from the IRDNC did a great job of introducing Namibia's model, but of course we know it also as a global leader in CBNRM, as it's had success in recovering wildlife populations and contributing a lot of economics to the country. So this session is supposed to be about governance, but I first want to just look at the effects of environmental factors, that being large mammals and landscape attributes, on income earned by the conservancies at the national scale throughout the program's history. The CBNRM economy is also vulnerable to restrictive wildlife trade policies in primary consumer countries, and also to tourist market instability, as we saw with the COVID-19 pandemic. And that is really, again, emphasizing need for improved economic resiliency and diversification strategies to reduce these financial instabilities. So I'm just completely going to skip over my methods for estimating income and running regression models. The major results of that work, though, is firstly that conservancy age, area, large mammals, and lower elevations all positively affected incomes. And large mammals are important drivers of income. The amount of hunting income I found actually decreased with years since conservancy establishment, which could reflect drought-related quota reductions, a limited hunting market over time, or possible market decline due to these trophy importation issues that we've talked about this week. Hunting income also increased with conservancy area, which is an important finding, suggesting that smaller conservancies could try to co-manage their wildlife and quotas. And of course, larger conservancies likely have more big five species present in harvest of other game species. Interestingly enough, big five species presence was not associated with photographic income. So that could suggest that phototourism offers an alternative to conservancies. But we also know that photographic markets are primarily interested in viewing only iconic species, so there might be conflict there. And photographic income was also not associated with proximity to national parks, suggesting that some of the concessions that they've had within national parks are not yet operational. Secondly, something I want to emphasize here is that hunting and photographic tourism appear to be complementary. And while photographic tourism generated greater incomes, about 450% greater median for conservancies earning more than zero in any given year, hunting was more prevalent on the landscape. So it occurs in 70 conservancies compared to 39, and was the dominant income source in 43 conservancies compared to just 16, which represents a big difference in habitat and area. So given the prevalence of hunting, again, across that landscape, it's not easily replaced. Conservancies are therefore vulnerable to those wildlife trade restrictions, particularly in the US, that we're seeing as Americans tend to target high value species like elephant. These importation restrictions could threaten the livelihoods and habitat that these conservancies are successfully managing. This is not a revolutionary recommendation, right? But increasingly important as these proposals continue to pop up in the global north, and as we try this week, right, to develop sustainable wildlife economies, most of which are still very dependent on hunting tourism. Right, over to governance now. I also evaluated effects of management and governance on total income earned since 2011 when this performance data was collected by the conservancies. Now, income from ecosystem services like hunting and photographic tourism are not just passively converted to conservation outcomes, right? There's a need for strong communal institutions and adaptive management to administer finances and distribute benefits. And income potential should increase as more effective governance is implemented, right? So conservation practices are accepted. There's a more secure environment for investment from NGOs or the private sector. And excuse me. But so despite an increasing global support for indigenous peoples and local communities, particularly around international policy, some of you just came from the COP in Cali, maybe not so much support for IPLCs at CITES, but there's really a lack of looking at institutional performance and use of community-led monitoring data, such as is in Namibia with their event book tool, where they collect this natural resource management performance by game guard staff and institutional governance performance by their elected committees. So conservancy age, management and governance performance, NGO presence, and the occurrence of an annual general meeting or AGM all positively affected income. And conservancies, particularly those that are newer without an NGO, should prioritize their local performance to improve their income potential. Just as an example, the median performance scores across conservancies were only about 50% of their maximum, even worse for those without an NGO. Another example of that is that my models predicted an increase of almost $90,000 when median management and governance scores were maxed out. So that's 150% or 172% of increase in median annual income. Secondly, and I'll wrap up here shortly, conservancies remain largely financially dependent on NGOs. And there were 19 conservancies without an NGO present earning much less. My models also predicted about 30,000 less US dollars when NGO presence was zeroed out. So this suggests that expanding that NGO support and activity to areas like the Northwest Kunene region, where on average conservancies are earning less and performing less, could obviously help. Now, these NGOs are helping to assist in natural resource management, negotiate with the private sector, or secure donor grants, but they also need to refocus their investments towards assisting these conservancies with governance and improving benefit distribution. Just a quick note, if I may, that AGMs, I think, are still important governance functions, an opportunity for conservancy members to engage directly in these processes, these decision-making processes. But other research shows that membership trust in their committees to manage finances is low. And so AGMs could be restructured to improve these governance indicators for member engagement and committee accountability. Benefit distribution remains a critical challenge for CBNRM. It was the lowest scoring governance indicator. Just as a couple examples of this, in 2022, the latest year of data that I had access to, only 7 conservancies met the ministry's requirement to invest 50% of their income towards community development. Of course, that's influenced by the COVID pandemic in the years past. But also human wildlife conflict compensation represented almost half of all cash benefits that the members are receiving. And of course, that's a critical social service, but it's diverting investment towards income generating opportunities or more transformative development opportunities. So there's this great need to invest more benefit distribution and effective spending to increase the socioeconomic impact of the income being generated by these ecosystem services. Just lastly, the event book tool is an effective monitoring system, but increasing the number of conservancies using it and the overall data collection quality, could improve future research. This is also needed in other countries. I know some of you guys are working on that in the region. Some concluding thoughts here towards developing sustainable wildlife economies. First, conservancies, particularly newer ones, smaller ones in adjacent to each other, like in the Northwest region, could consider co-managing their wildlife, working with tourism industries together to improve their income potential. There's a need to diversify, noting that that was the lowest scoring natural resource management indicator. That's not to say we should diversify at the expense of something that is working, like hunting. Just want to make that clear. And lastly, we need to address this issue of underperformance. We're not going to have 100% performance, right? But the goal, the vision for CBNRM is to build these rural communal democracies, right? And we can start to do that by expanding NGO partnerships, more transparent partnerships, and refocusing on governance. So thank you.